Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Deborah Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light.
In just a moment, the Morning Light panel will go behind the headlines.
But first, here's a look at what's coming up a little bit later in the show. We will review The Sound of Hope, the story of Possum Trot. It's based on an inspiring true story of a community banding together to protect vulnerable children. Plus, we will talk to a couple who have fostered dozens of children and ended up adopting them.
But it is Friday, August 23rd. The moment of truth came for Vice President Kamala Harris last night with her most consequential speech yet. Harris's emotion-packed speech began with a story of family, struggle, and achievement, then pivoted to some tough talk on global and national security. But with the presidency on the line, did she meet expectations? Were there hints of cooperation or common ground with Republican opponents in a possible Harris administration?
And I think we really have to look at the policies of both of the candidates. Well, the vice president's journey from a McDonald's worker to presidential contender was central to the Harris story this week in Chicago. Harris told the crowd it was her late mother, a scientist and immigrant from India, who shaped her dreams and ambitions. In 2024, what is the power of a biography, a person's story, to help us decide our choice for president?
A story sometimes is everything.
That is true.
And it has been 48 years since the founding of Prison Fellowship Ministry by Richard Nixon tough guy Charles Colson, whose prison experience and conversion to Christianity sparked decades of concern and reform for prisoners and their families. But with both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris spending millions to define their opponent as either a criminal or radical, is prison reform stalled or on hold? I'm going to take these questions to the Morning Light panel. Welcoming back former Secretary of Corrections John Wetzel, mental health counselor Jessica Meade, and Jeremy Samek. We're glad to have you back from the Independence Law Center. Let me just say, first of all, we've gotten so much feedback on this conversation we've had this week, and so many have said it was nice to be able to hear a conversation where people weren't yelling or talking at each other. So thank you for that. Jess, I'm going to start with you. The moment of truth for Kamala Harris last night, most people didn't know her. Most people knew her from TikTok videos, the cackle. People have generally said, well, we don't know if she's smart, but she stepped out on stage and there was a moment. You're just impressions, not political impressions or personal impressions of that moment.
She sounded fantastic, whether she wrote her speech or somebody else did.
Sure.
It actually was kind of moving. I felt myself, as a mom, I think, tear up even a few times.
Yeah.
Where she I think, reached her target audience, politics aside, where she was appealing to what felt like the common person.
Yeah. We heard all week, we've talked about this off and on in the panel, about these terms, freedom, kind of almost the redefinition of terms. And then throughout, you really heard church words. That's kind of an interesting thing, where people were using church language. Joy came up a lot. Tell me, Jeremy, as a person who has watched years of political conventions and are close to the flame on politics, take a look at that speech just as a piece of oratory. And then what was left out, perhaps, that we needed to look at?
Yeah, I think that speech was very heavy on the platitudes, the feel-good statements that we need to move forward and be the future for our children, the things that politicians on every side of the aisle says, and extremely light on policy, with few exceptions. And I think people resonate with that. People resonate with, hey, what is this human interest story that do we have similarities in our backgrounds? And those are things that are wonderful to look at. They're helpful to get to know people. But when we're electing leaders, when we're electing people who are going to make policy for everyone, we really have to look beyond that. And one of the areas I think that they did get into the details was abortion.
Again and again and again.
And it was one of those areas that was hit very, very hard. Surprisingly, compared to all of the other things that people are worried about in the economy. And so that's becoming an issue. And so I think that's actually a good thing, because now the general public is going to be talking about those issues and saying, what is the policy?
Okay, so Donald Trump is watching this morning. Republicans are watching this morning. How would you tell them to frame up the argument on abortion? What is the way to approach this without doing what many Republicans fear, alienating the very suburban women that they're trying to attract?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to do what they're already doing, which is to show compassion. to say that there are difficult situations that people are put in.
The reality of it.
The reality of it, and show all of the ways that the Republican Party and the Democrat Party have come together to put in place safety nets to be able to help families and to help mothers.
Yeah.
But then to show what is the difference between the two sides. And so right now, the Democratic Party's platform and what she spoke about last night is abortion all the way up until 9 months. Her vice president selection is somebody who removed requirements to even catalog whenever failed abortion attempts resulted in a live birth. They kept records of those. They removed that at the last term, so they wouldn't even know whether that happened, and removed the obligation of doctors to actually provide life-saving care after the baby is born. The attacks that were done with David Leiden when she was the Attorney General of California, those are the types of things that I think the Republicans need to bring up to the forefront so people know.
So, John, oftentimes you can almost hear the audience when they're looking at this panel saying, I know what that guy's going to say, I know what she's going to say, I know what you're going to say. You've had this ability kind of in your political life to take a look at and say, so what do you think they need to say to cut through issues? Because sometimes it feels like Republicans are, if you just knew the facts, and Democrats are, if you just knew our heart, you'll overlook the facts. So how do you help people sift through? How do you make a decision when it comes that's pretty tough for people?
Yeah, I don't think you can make it on those speeches. I mean, they were both very motivational for different ways.
In different ways, yeah.
I mean, you think Trump coming off the shooting and stuff was just a really calm, almost a hint of religious tone and stuff. And then Kamala last night was fantastic. And then, you know, me as someone who just looks kind of objectively, 2 minutes after the speech, you go, okay, well, let's match that up to what you did when you had a chance to do it. Yeah. And it doesn't match up. Yeah. So I think these speeches are really just, again, to target the base and get as many people out. So it's more like a coach doing a rah-rah thing. Yeah. And it's really leaning in, to your point, leaning into the issues that you think are going to get the most people out. And it's a numbers race.
Let's talk about story. It's politicians, as much as you don't want to hear or listen to, say, if story matters, people relate to stories, whether it's, President Reagan or Walter Mondale or Barack Obama. People are drawn in, Bill Clinton, the man from Hope, to a story. Kamala Harris's story is more complicated, perhaps, than some Americans. They led the night before with this notion of a blended family. You're introducing your blended family and then all the relatives. That's kind of a new thing. When you're looking at biographies, what are the things you're looking for, Jess, to say, oh, I relate with that person?
Absolutely. You use the exact word I was thinking, is relatability. Like, oh, my family's blended, or, my parents were immigrants, or my grandparents were. And so it takes those big ideas and it breaks it down and makes it feel like, oh, and it feels very like positive and hopeful. Right. Like, here she is, her mom was an immigrant, came with nothing, and now she is up for president. Yeah. Like, it is very like motivational also.
So the faith story was woven in to some degree in the Republican convention, although President Trump has not made that a centerpiece of his personal story. She has kind of more, Oprah brought in some hints of what would faith be. But how does a Christian voter evaluate a biography to say, I relate or understand them? The notion that Vice President Harris is a Hindu or that was introduced, her family history, Hindu. But Hindus, for example, are very pro-life, yet she is not. How do you evaluate the story, the personal stories?
I think people have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Human interest stories and learning about each other, that is human nature. And I think that's something that God placed in us, to want to have a relationship with each other. And that's quite frankly why politicians do that, because they know it's effective. And it's useful. It's useful to try to relate to people, whether it's when you're meeting somebody for coffee or whether you're just listening to somebody on the screen who will never talk to you in a million years. When you can have that shared, hey, I also worked at that place growing up, or I moved to that city when I was younger. Those things resonate with people. But as Christians, we need to make sure that we don't fall into the cult of personality. We need to look beyond, again, like we've been saying today.
In either side.
On either side, we need to look at what are the facts on the ground, what are they actually wanting to do, And that's what has to be important, and line that up with the Word of God.
That's helpful. I want to ask one question, and I think, John, I want you to answer this first. The criminal justice reform, the idea that our prisons should not just be about warehousing prisoners, has been a passion of conservative Republicans and progressive Democrats. It's one of those rare areas where people have come along and worked together. But something has happened in this campaign where both candidates are accusing the other of being too close to criminals. Either you're a criminal, or you're too close to the criminals, or you let them out of jail. Why should Christians, and specifically people who identify as evangelical Christians, care about criminal justice reform and not just say, we'll get to that another day?
Well, I mean, if you think of nearly 2 million people incarcerated across America right now, 95% of them will come back out. So the way they come back out, better, worse, is really put together, and it's really a byproduct of several things. Did we put the right people in? When we put low-risk people in, we increase their likelihood of committing crime. And then what do we do while they're in there? And then do we provide supports, especially pro-social community supports that are not provided by government, for them to be successful? So yeah, I think there's no doubt, we all have an investment in corrections' ability to correct.
Mm-hmm. Jess, have your church or your community been involved at times with organizations like Prison Fellowship Ministry or Angel Tree or some of those? I mean, how has the response in your particular church or church community been on criminal justice?
I'll be honest, we go to a really large church.
Yeah.
As far as I know, we don't have much of an involvement. But I think the important thing for kind of the common person to remember is that prisoners or not, they're still made in the image of God. And we need to treat them to some extent as such and not just what their behaviors have dictated.
20 seconds.
Yeah, well, our church, we just had a wonderful story where a man, one of the members of our church goes in and meets with prisoners, and he became a believer through those meetings. And he just came to our church about 2 months ago, and he's now going through the membership process. And just to see those life changes on the individual level, but organizations like the Chuck Colson Fellowship and Chuck Colson Center have done amazing things. Even our political parties have been able to do things. In 2018, when the Trump administration, in a bipartisan way, did the First Step Act. And so there is a little bit of hope in this area that people can move forward.
Prison oversight just passed at the federal level, almost unanimous in the Senate. So at the federal level, it's still
big stuff.
Yeah, big stuff.
So you've done your job. You've left our audience wanting more. We'll have you back again sometime next week, a brand new panel. We'll see if they're as good as this conversation was. Thank you very, very much to our panel. Well, still ahead on Morning Light, we're taking you to the movies.
911, what's your emergency?
I need to know my mommy. He's doing something bad to her.
Give me my money!
I need to know my mama!
Sacrificial love for children who have experienced unthinkable horrors, how one small community banded together to give them hope. We review The Sound of Hope, the story of Possum Trot. And good morning, Yoakumtown, York County. Thank you so much for watching Morning Light.
It's hard to feel like I'm the only one who sees these things. 70% of the kids in the system are there because of neglect. The other 30% are put through hell. We need your help.
Well, this is an amazing true story. Members of a church in East Texas adopting dozens of children from foster care. The Sound of Hope, the story of Possum Trot, was released in theaters July 4th.
And I saw this in the theater a few weeks ago, and while sitting there, I really had to keep reminding myself that this is a true story, and it's amazing what happened. Take a look.
Are you sure these people want us?
I know they do.
You can call me Mama.
Reverend W.C. Martin and his wife Donna, better known as the First Lady, live in Possum Trot, Texas. Reverend Martin is a pastor at Bennett Chapel Missionary Baptist Church. After the unexpected passing of Donna's mother, she says the Lord spoke to her and she felt inspired to adopt children.
I'm gonna look like Mama did.
Adoption? How we gonna do this with all we got already going on?
Initially, Reverend Martin is hesitant, but eventually understands that this is a calling from God and asks the congregation to consider adopting foster children. The Martins had 2 biological children and adopted 4 children.
You're gonna be my little boy now.
That sparked his congregation to follow suit.
If we ain't wrap our arms around the most vulnerable, then what do we have? Noise! And the children can't take the noise anymore.
This is something that we must do.
22 families agree and wrap their arms around 77 unwanted children.
That's about right.
We want the ones that don't nobody else want.
Some of the most difficult to place.
And I had to remove the kids because, well, you know, it's our job to keep them safe. She gave me these.
We care about kids here.
Which ones? You can't see the ones sitting right outside on your doorstep?
What's happening with Possum Trot could mean a huge change for the system.
Throughout the movie, you will see some of the struggles with adoption.
I turned on the water and he just fell apart. The real world hits hard.
I don't want to be here. Everybody's falling apart.
I'm doing the best I can.
And how this community supports one another.
We're doing something almost nobody else will.
We're family.
Sometimes through prayer, sometimes through just being there and listening.
I can't get him back. We gotta work on this together. I ain't never seen you so scared. Is he speaking to you?
This should be a child without him. He can turn this whole thing on.
You were a gift, and you were only ever meant to be loved. We your people now. And love never gives up.
A really powerful movie.
It looks like it, yeah. Beautiful.
I certainly was taking notes while watching it. And First Lady Donna said some powerful things. She said, "We believe, we followed, and we do not walk alone." And that really was a very comforting statement as well.
These are heroic families that are involved in foster care. We've had so many close to us that have done it, and it's changed their entire lives.
Yeah, and after the movie, actually, the Reverend and First Lady Donna, they spoke and they talked to you about adoption.
Wow.
And so that was really, it was a great movie, and it put things into perspective.
For people who are pro-life, this is really the next concern, an area of concern and battlefield in the fight for life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, The Sound of Hope, the story of Possum Trot, is available to watch for Angel Guild members on angel.com, the Angel TV app, and the Angel mobile app.
And the film is helping to shed light on the foster care crisis in America. Up next, we're going to talk to a couple who listened and responded to God's calling and opened up their home to foster care children. But first, good morning, Harrisburg and Harrisburg Christian School. Thank you for watching Morning Light.
According to data from the Administration for Children and Families, nearly 400,000 children are in foster care as of 2022. Many children are robbed of the stability and love they deserve. Fostering and adoption is an immense commitment and should be prayerfully considered. Joining me right now are Pastor Terry and Nancy Lamer. They have been fostering children, even adopting some of those children over the last 4 decades. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
So you have fostered and adopted children. Really, what led you to this decision?
I believe that we bought our first home when I was 19. So we had a home, and I was reading a newspaper, and it had an article needing foster homes in Adams County. So we talked about it, and he said, well, let's just pray about it and see where the Lord... We'd actually just gotten saved not too long before that. So we prayed about it, and we just felt like the Lord saying, open your door as a mission field and let the kids come to you. So. And I was with kids a lot. I was from a large family, so having kids, the more the merrier, as they would say, you know. But yeah, so the Lord just seemed to say, open your home.
And that's pretty much what it was like in the movie too. It was like God's calling, prayed about it, and God's calling. So how many children have you fostered?
About 80.
Oh my goodness.
We nenever kept track of them.
Oh my goodness.
You know, we just, you know, felt if we had a phone call, the Lord was, had that child for our home, so we had just taken them in.
And of that number, how many have you adopted?
Six.
Six, yeah.
6.
So I have 2 biological children. We've adopted 6, and most recent 5 years ago. So.
Oh my goodness, well, congratulations to both of you. In the movie, we saw their highs and lows. There are things that you encounter. How has it been?
I think mostly positive,
Yes.
There are always ups and downs with just like every child. And so they're all individuals. We just learned how to handle their situations, and we realize they come from different backgrounds. I think the movie depicted that very well. So.
Right. And I'm sure praying through it, how did prayer really help you through these situations?
Just giving them to the Lord, just saying, Lord, they're yours, they're your children. Help us to love on them and do the best we can with them, So I think the Lord just more or less, the Lord just giving you that light of what to do with them,
And how have the children responded?
Very good. Yeah, it seemed like the children was very happy to be there. You know what I mean? And they were very appreciative. I mean, you had some, like the little ones, the culture where they came from and all that, and you just, loved on them and told them, talked about what was going on, and they adapted, to that, and loved it for that,
We always tried to reassure them that we were not trying to keep them from their family. We always looked at ourselves being a bridge between the families. But when that didn't work out, then we were a bridge for them to be adopted. So they just felt comfortable knowing they were safe.
Yeah, that's really a great way of looking at it. Now, you have certainly changed their lives, but how have they changed your lives?
I think each one has added to our lives in a different way.
Yes, just more appreciative of what we go through, and how we see the outcome of it, or going through it.
Yeah, it's broadened our perspective on even life here in America, because, often we go to mission fields outside of the United States, but we have a mission field of children right here at our doorstep.
Yeah, that's actually a wonderful point. So if people are watching and thinking, hey, this may be something that I really should consider, what is your advice?
Well, I think you need to know that it's something the Lord wants you to do. I don't think we just do it out of emotion. I think we need to know that it's something the Lord's called us into, and know that He'll be with us as we go through those different obstacles that might come up.
And as far as like the first steps, what would be the first steps to doing this?
To get a hold of the county you're with or a private agency, and go from there. Find out as much detail from, each one and which way the Lord would direct you. We worked for the county, and we also had done private agencies. So is just to get a hold of, or even if you know people that have done it, talk to them about it and pursue it then, like that.
That is great. Yeah. Thank you for what you have done. You have changed so many lives, and that's well worth what you've been doing. So thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And stay with us. We will be back in 1 minute. Welcome back. Good morning, Reading, home to the Reading Fire Museum. Thank you for watching Morning Light on Lighthouse TV. And coming up on Monday on Morning Light, many kids are heading back to college, some to Christian colleges, others to secular universities. How can students keep their faith while they are away from home? Well, Jeff, that's a look at what's coming up Monday on Morning Light. Now for your closing thought.
Well, thank you, Deborah. Those are pretty important topics. Well, what a week it's been here on Morning Light. We hope it's the first of many in a space designed to let you breathe a little, to escape the shouting, the noise, the sarcasm, the made-up controversies, things that keep us from loving God and serving neighbors. We've covered a lot of ground: health, history, fitness, anxiety, sports, politics. But I hope you see we're doing it differently, through the lens of faith, not fear, with a belief that a relationship with God changes how we see the world. So first, thanks for praying for our team and this little lighthouse in the middle of a sea of darkness. It is making an enormous difference for us. I'm Jeff Coleman. For Deborah and the entire Morning Light team, thank you for spending your time with us. God willing, we'll see you again on Monday.